Hi, Jeremy Jansen here from the Beanpole Gardener. Thanks for joining me. As you can see, I've spent a lot more time with pen and paper than by getting my hands dirty in the garden, and for good reason. I realize there's a lot of benefit and need to do a little bit of planning when it comes to the garden. I need to figure out how this is going to work before I head out there with a packet of seeds. So what you see here is my crop plan. On the left-hand side are all the different crops that I hope to plant. These were easy to figure out, and this is kind of the fun part. It was kind of the wish list. And thought through basically what makes its way into my grocery cart each week, or what would I like to serve, or what would I like to include in some of my recipes here at home. So that's the left-hand side. So when you get your list there, that's the easiest thing to do. Hope all that makes it into my garden. Some might not make the cut, but most of it will probably get in there. But as you can see, there's a lot more to it than that. I wanted to really build in crop rotation into my thinking. So I came to understand the general rule of crop rotation is that crops of the same family should not follow themselves in and out of the different plots in your garden. So things from the cucumber, squash, zucchini family should not be in that same plot in my garden in 2013. Instead, it should be something from the carrot family or from the corn family or whatever. That's a general rule. There are a few special rules or pieces of advice that about crop rotation, and you can see that in column C. Certain families or certain vegetables leave nutrients behind that are better for other ones than that you might want to consider when you're planning that rotation. So you can see here that I want to make sure that green beans precede anything from the brass family, so broccoli or arugula. So I'm building that into my plan. I want to make sure I have those thoughts aligned and prepared before I go out there and digging up the soil and putting things down. A couple other things I want to draw some attention to. There's a column here called winter cold frames. I plan on using some cold frames this winter, which are essentially 2 foot by 4 foot mini greenhouses with a plexiglass top that sit out there in the garden, and you can plant some hardier crops into those and then essentially harvest them right up through the middle of winter. I'll talk a whole lot more about those when it comes time to build those cold frames and prepare them in the late summer and fall. But I wanted to have an identification of those crops that might find their way in there so that I'm not planting a ton of them out there in the summer garden. Kind of space things out and spread around the different vegetables that I harvest across the year. And the last 3 columns are really speaking to how much space do these different things take to plant and grow, and how tall are they, and how how many am I going to get in a certain amount of space in my garden. So essentially the bed that I'm putting things into speaks to how tall the plant is. I don't want the taller plants to cast shadows on the smaller plants, so I want to make sure I put those on the north side of my garden and vice versa with the things that kind of hug the ground. So knowing which ones those are is helpful. And then as far as the distance apart and the number I plant inside of a 36-inch bed, all just speaks to how much yield I'm going to get from these different plants, how many are going to be concentrated in a certain amount of space so that I don't plant too many or too few. So I'm going to actually post this spreadsheet on my blog here, and you can feel free to download it and adjust it to your needs, but it's definitely valuable to plan this stuff out. I want to show you one more thing before I get off here, and that's the actual layout of my garden that takes into consideration all those things that you just saw. Here's my 40 by 40 foot space, the tall stuff on the north side, the low stuff on the south side, planting the garden from east to west. And the beds are about 2.5 to 3.5 foot wide, and as are the walking spaces. And obviously I have a spot there carved out for the cold frame. So thinking through all this stuff and spending some time with paper and pen is definitely valuable, so you can plant your garden in a way that produces the best yield and takes advantage of all the different elements that you want to optimize, such as soil and sun and whatnot. So I hope this is helpful, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks a lot.